is it. This is the environment within which you have to live.
There's a very good fish and chip shop down the road, so that'll be useful.
Where on earth did you find that out from?
Once a royal with limitless privilege, Prince Andrew now stands at the center of a shocking financial crisis that's left his world crumbling. Stripped of his titles, engulfed in scandal, and reportedly cut off from royal funding, Andrew's fall from grace has been nothing short of catastrophic. Behind the polished palace walls, desperation and denial collide as debts pile up and allies vanish. So how did a once powerful prince end up on the brink of ruin? Let's dig deep. The hidden price of a fairy tale marriage. Prince Andrew's life appeared destined for privilege, prestige, and the polished image of royalty that the world admired from afar. Yet, beneath the glittering veneer of royal pageantry and carefully orchestrated public appearances, a quieter, more insidious drama was unfolding, one that would gnaw at the edges of his fortune for years to come. The foundation of this financial turbulence can be traced back to 1986, the year he married Sarah Ferguson, a young, vibrant, and famously charming woman who would become the Duchess of York. Their wedding was nothing short of a global spectacle, an event watched by hundreds of millions of eyes worldwide, dazzling onlookers with opulence and ceremony. Nearly £500,000 were spent on pomp and circumstance, a price tag that seemed trivial in a world of crowns, palaces, and princely allowances. But it was only the beginning of an increasingly expensive partnership. Behind the smiles, camera flashes, and fairy tale moments, Ferguson's insatiable appetite for luxury began quietly, but unmistakably, to put strain on Andrew's finances.
Street Child is so good is that Children in Crisis were in the field in Sierra Leone, saw Tom's work.
By 1988, barely 2 years into their marriage, Ferguson made headlines for a truly extravagant and eyebrow-raising act of travel. Arriving from New York, she reportedly brought with her 50 suitcases crammed with designer clothing, expensive gifts, and personal trinkets. The airline levied a fine for excess baggage, an amount equivalent to a royal aide's monthly salary, a small but telling indicator of the Duchess's approach to spending. While Heathrow staff may have laughed at the spectacle, insiders within the palace watched with unease. Advisors later noted that Ferguson seemed to operate under a startling assumption. Marriage to a prince meant access to unlimited credit, a misconception that would repeatedly push Andrew's personal finances to the brink. Her charm, charisma, and magnetic public persona masked a more troubling reality, an escalating pattern of high-cost spending that often far outstripped her means. Reports suggest that her annual expenditures on travel, lavish gifts, and entertainment soared to over £860,000, a staggering figure that placed considerable strain on her royal household. By the early 1990s,
Probably had to get on better with the policeman than Prince Andrew, in fact, just to make sure that in the car journey back they said, oh, she's nice.
debts with Coutts Bank had reportedly reached a staggering £4 million. Andrew, whether out of love, duty, or a mix of both, frequently stepped in to cover her bills, bailing her out and smoothing over financial crises before they became public. This pattern of codependence tied his wealth inexorably to her spending habits, creating a delicate balance where his fortune was constantly pulled toward her extravagant lifestyle. What looked like a fairy tale life from the outside, the grandeur of royal weddings, the glittering attire, and the excitement of high society, carried a hidden cost that was anything but magical. Beneath the surface of luxury, Andrew's bank accounts were quietly absorbing the weight of repeated financial pressures. Each glamorous evening, each shopping spree, and each high-profile event added a layer to the mounting fiscal tension that would define much of their marriage. The picture was clear. Even a prince, protected by titles, privilege, and prestige, was not immune to the very real consequences of financial overreach and unchecked spending habits. In the end, the fairy tale carried a heavy price, and Prince Andrew's finances have been paying for it for decades. But could breaking free finally lift the burden, or will it pull him even deeper into financial strain? Now let's explore how Ferguson's reinvention kept Andrew financially bound. Divorce without escape. The official end of Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson's marriage in 1996 might have closed one chapter of their lives, but it did little to disentangle the financial web that had been woven over a decade. On paper, the divorce marked a legal separation, a formal acknowledgement that the fairy tale union had crumbled. Yet, in reality, the bonds of money, lifestyle, and public perception remained tightly knotted, creating a continuing saga of dependence and risk that would shape both of their futures for years to come. Following the split, Ferguson crossed the Atlantic in search of reinvention, determined to reclaim relevance and establish herself on her own terms. In the United States, she embarked on a high-profile career that blended celebrity allure with self-help wisdom, quickly securing lucrative contracts, such as a partnership with Weight Watchers and the publication of her memoir, My Story. Between these ventures, Ferguson reportedly earned millions, and for a time, it appeared she had successfully pivoted from scandal-prone royal to relatable public figure, admired for resilience, candor, and determination. But beneath the public veneer of reinvention, Ferguson's lifestyle continued to operate on a scale that far exceeded her earnings. Lavish hotel stays, daily spa treatments.
How do you see your future after the divorce?
Take every day as it comes. Every day is a new day.
Frequent transatlantic flights and near-constant wardrobe overhauls drained cash at an astonishing rate, leaving her financial situation precariously exposed. Despite her considerable income, the flow of money could never keep up with the magnitude of her expenditures. And while the public saw a self-made, charismatic duchess thriving in her independence, Andrew quietly remained a key financial anchor. Long after the divorce was finalized, he frequently stepped in to cover debts, settle bills, and support the lifestyle to which Ferguson had grown accustomed. Friends and observers described a relationship that defied conventional definitions. Though no longer legally married, the two continued to operate as if they were bound together by shared circumstance, history, and mutual dependency. The phrase, "not married, but living like they were," became an apt description of a dynamic where emotional ties, public scrutiny, and financial obligations intertwined, creating a partnership that existed in the liminal space between separation and union.
It was just an invisible hand. You always felt it. And it was,
The financial consequences for Andrew were profound. Each bailout, each intervention to prevent public embarrassment or private collapse, chipped away at his disposable income, while simultaneously exposing him to scrutiny from the media, the public, and financial advisors. What had once been a private matter of household budgeting now became a high-stakes game played under the unforgiving gaze of a world fascinated by royal affairs. Andrew's involvement in Ferguson's spending and ventures tethered him to her unpredictable choices, leaving him vulnerable to the fallout from business failures, public scandals, and the cyclical nature of fame. Ultimately, the divorce may have marked the end of a marriage, but it did nothing to sever the intricate financial ties that increasingly defined Andrew's public and private life. Even as Ferguson pursued reinvention and sought independence, the echoes of their shared history and the persistent reality of her extravagant spending kept him closely linked to her fortunes and misfortunes. For Andrew, the end of the marriage was only the beginning of a new, complicated chapter in a story where money, loyalty, and scandal continued to collide. But does he have any financial discipline, or is he quick to indulge at every opportunity? Now let's dive into Andrew's alleged extravagance during a royal visit. Scandal in the tropics. Even for someone born into privilege and power, the stories surrounding Prince Andrew's behavior during official engagements have shocked and fascinated the public. One of the most sensational allegations emerged from his 2000 taxpayer-funded trip to Thailand, a visit that was supposed to be part of his duties as the United Kingdom's trade envoy. Instead, according to royal historian Andrew Lowney, what unfolded behind closed doors was a scandalous misuse of his position and public resources. Lowney, speaking on the Daily Mail podcast Deep Dive, The Fall of the House of York, made startling claims that the former prince had arranged for as many as 40 prostitutes to be brought to his five-star hotel over the course of just 4 days. The allegations paint a picture of a royal life where the line between duty and indulgence was not just blurred, it was allegedly erased entirely. This was no private misstep. It was a display of behavior conducted in the shadow of official responsibilities, a misuse of taxpayer money, and a breach of the moral expectations that traditionally accompany royal service. The historian went further, accusing Andrew of exploiting his official role to satisfy personal desires while simultaneously enriching himself. He had no moral boundaries, Loney remarked, describing a man who allegedly transformed formal diplomatic and trade visits into private opportunities for pleasure and excess.
Because I have absolutely no memory of that photograph ever being taken.
The narrative suggested that Andrew's travels were frequently less about commerce or statecraft and more about personal gratification, with an emphasis on luxury, secrecy, and indulgence. What makes these allegations particularly striking is the apparent regularity and audacity of the behavior. Turning an official visit, funded by the public and under the scrutiny of international hosts, into a personal holiday of such magnitude suggests a brazen disregard for protocol and reputation. It also underscores the broader theme that Andrew's public life, often gilded and glamorous, may have concealed a pattern of questionable decisions behind closed doors. The lavish settings of five-star hotels, the elaborate arrangements, and the involvement of multiple women over several days all point to a level of premeditation and privilege that ordinary citizens could scarcely imagine. Moreover, these allegations highlight the persistent tension between Andrew's royal status and his personal conduct. For decades, the former prince's actions have been under scrutiny, from financial entanglements to controversial social associations. The Thailand episode, as described by Loney, fits within this broader pattern.
Sarah's got 600 of the 720.
Quiet.
An individual accustomed to wealth and entitlement reportedly using his position for personal benefit, blurring the line between public service and private indulgence. While official confirmation or legal verification of these claims remains complex and contested, their public discussion adds another layer to the ongoing narrative of Andrew's life, a life marked by extraordinary privilege, public fascination, and repeated scandal. It reinforces the idea that royal status does not shield one from moral and financial judgment, nor does it prevent history from scrutinizing every indulgence. Ultimately, the Thailand scandal stands as a stark warning and a sensational episode in modern royal life. Behind the pomp and titles, complex and controversial realities often lurk. For Andrew, the trip, if the claims are true, reveals how privilege, poor choices, and public scrutiny can intertwine, leaving lasting ripples. This shocking claim exposed not just Prince Andrew's reckless behavior, but the growing cracks in his royal reputation and financial stability. Yet was there ever an effort to control his spiraling expenses, or did the palace simply watch as his fortune slipped away? Now let's unravel the fraying safety net. Royal support withdrawn. By the late 2010s, the once unquestioned financial cushion that had supported Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson began to show serious cracks. For decades, their lifestyle, glittering, high-profile, and expensive, had been underpinned by both personal fortune and royal resources. Yet as King Charles consolidated royal finances and enforced stricter oversight, the era of unofficial bailouts was quietly coming to an end. Allowances were trimmed, discretionary support was reduced, and the implicit safety net that had allowed Ferguson's lavish habits to continue was unraveling before their eyes. Ferguson's lifestyle had long been inconsistent with her actual income, maintaining Royal Lodge, a sprawling Windsor residence valued at £30 million, attending high-end events, jetting across Europe, and launching costly personal ventures. All of it demanded far more than her earnings could sustain. Her company, Sarah's Stories Limited, officially reported profits that barely exceeded a few £1,000s in some years, often less than £3,000 annually. Meanwhile, expenses continued to mount, feeding a widening gap between her public persona of success and the harsh financial reality. For Andrew,
it's terrible. I mean, you're going away and leaving what you love behind.
decades of informal support and bailouts could no longer absorb these deficits without serious consequences. The palace's intervention was decisive, clear, and unavoidable. Andrew and Ferguson were informed that Royal Lodge could no longer be maintained under royal funding. Costs had spiraled out of control. Maintenance bills had skyrocketed, staff had been reduced, and the couple faced the grim prospect of vacating the iconic property that had long symbolized both privilege and security. For Andrew, this was more than a logistical or financial problem. It was a profound symbol of shifting tides. The withdrawal of support represented a clear message. Even royalty could not indefinitely shield loved ones from the realities of wealth mismanagement, and past indulgences would eventually meet the limits of practicality. Despite these challenges, Ferguson attempted to adapt, taking steps to supplement income and maintain relevance. She launched a podcast, released motivational videos, and undertook small-scale speaking engagements across Europe. On the surface, these moves suggested a willingness to take control of her finances and public image.
And 97% of those 931 are still operating today, and they're still growing.
Yet, the reality was far harsher. No matter how innovative or media-savvy these efforts were, they could not keep pace with the scale of her lifestyle or the entrenched pattern of financial overextension. The gap between appearance and reality widened, making it abundantly clear that Andrew could no longer cover her expenditures without risking his own financial stability. The fraying safety net marked a turning point in their shared financial narrative. For decades, the couple had relied on a combination of privilege, connections, and informal royal support to sustain a lifestyle that far exceeded their means. Now, with royal oversight tightening and public scrutiny intensifying, both Andrew and Ferguson faced the stark truth. Indulgence without restraint carries consequences, and even the strongest social and familial networks cannot indefinitely shield against financial mismanagement. The era of invisible protection was over, leaving them exposed to the harsh realities of wealth, responsibility, and the limits of entitlement. In this critical period, the unraveling of financial security was more than just a story of money. It was a cautionary tale of status, indulgence, and the inevitable reckoning when lifestyle and income collide. For Andrew and Ferguson, the implications extended beyond bank balances, touching personal freedom, public image, and the very essence of their royal identity. Prince Andrew's royal safety net crumbled as funding cuts exposed the cracks in his and Ferguson's lavish lifestyle. But will this turning point finally rein in their extravagant spending or push them further into financial chaos? Now, let's explore how Ferguson's choices amplified Andrew's vulnerability. When visibility costs millions. Even as Sarah Ferguson strove to reinvent herself after the turbulence of her marriage and divorce, the ripple effects of her actions continued to cascade through Prince Andrew's life, particularly his finances and public reputation. The story of her attempted comebacks is not just about ambition and resilience. It's also a cautionary tale about how one person's decisions can directly affect the fortunes and image of those closest to them. In 2010, Ferguson became the center of global attention when a sting operation allegedly caught her offering access to Prince Andrew for a staggering £500,000. The footage sent shockwaves through the media, sparking an international firestorm. Sponsors immediately severed ties, speaking engagements vanished, and public backlash was swift and unforgiving. What might have been a private misstep became a worldwide spectacle, with Andrew's own reputation inevitably entangled in the fallout. The prince, though not directly involved, could not escape the shadow cast by his former wife's actions. Each headline, each television report further intensified scrutiny on his finances, status, and the household he maintained. Yet the sting operation was only one chapter in a long series of financial challenges amplified by Ferguson's high-risk ventures. From Heartmore, a business venture that collapsed with staggering losses, to wellness retreats and lifestyle products that failed to gain traction, Ferguson repeatedly embarked on projects that drained capital without delivering returns. Losses often exceeded £700,000, and because she remained dependent on a network of support, sometimes including Andrew himself or the royal family indirectly, each failed project chipped away at his disposable resources. Every investment, every ambitious scheme became another reminder that the financial consequences of her lifestyle and business choices could not be contained. The situation escalated further when Ferguson, in a moment of desperation, accepted money from financier Jeffrey Epstein to settle personal debts. Though the sums involved varied in reports, the association reignited global scrutiny and cast long shadows over Andrew's household. Observers were quick to note a pattern. Ferguson's ventures were glamorous, high-profile, and often high-stakes, yet their outcomes frequently disappointed. For Andrew, this meant that every new enterprise she pursued carried potential financial and reputational risk, leaving him indirectly exposed to both public judgment and tangible monetary loss. Importantly, the impact went beyond mere embarrassment. These scandals affected Andrew's wealth management, strained household finances, and challenged his credibility as a member of the royal family. Privilege and status, it became evident, were no shield against the fallout of repeated high-risk choices. Each sensational story, from failed ventures to controversial associations, served as a reminder that even those born into wealth are vulnerable when tied to unpredictable partners. For Andrew, Ferguson's public missteps and financial recklessness became an enduring source of tension. Headlines were not just fleeting distractions. They were daily reminders that his personal and financial life were intertwined with hers. As the media dissected every detail, observers saw a recurring narrative, a pattern of visibility, risk, and miscalculation that consistently left Andrew exposed. In this complex dance of ambition and consequence, the royal narrative revealed a stark truth. No amount of status or privilege can fully protect one from the repercussions of the choices made by those closest to them. Ferguson's scandals and failed ventures only pulled Andrew deeper into financial crisis. But did he ever notice the warning signs? Or was his loyalty too strong to let him walk away? Now let's uncover how Ferguson's bold ambitions kept Andrew trapped in a cycle of risk and regret. High-stakes ventures. Even under intense public scrutiny and with a history of financial turbulence, Sarah Ferguson showed no signs of slowing down. Determined to reclaim her independence, reinvent her public image, and assert relevance in a world that had long moved on, she embarked on new business ventures with bold ambition. Yet, as with many of her undertakings, these moves often carried hidden risks, and Prince Andrew, still intertwined through both past financial support and the residual ties of their shared history, found himself indirectly exposed once more. In 2019, Ferguson attached her name to what seemed like a dazzling futuristic opportunity. She became the brand ambassador for Pegasus Group Holdings, a high-profile venture based in Nevada, USA. The project was audacious in scope, a £3 billion solar-powered digital currency facility dubbed The Hive that promised to combine cutting-edge technology, renewable energy, and financial innovation. The media buzzed with headlines of Ferguson's return to prominence, touting a £200,000 upfront fee and potential earnings that could exceed £1 million if the venture succeeded. For many, it appeared that Ferguson had finally found a venture that could restore both her reputation and her financial footing, a modern stage for her charm, visibility, and entrepreneurial flair. Yet as the year progressed, the Pegasus dream began to unravel. By year's end, legal disputes and accusations of mismanagement engulfed the project. Investors alleged that the company had failed to deliver the promised infrastructure and had squandered millions of pounds in capital. The carefully constructed narrative of Ferguson's financial revival crumbled, and the promised earnings she had anticipated never materialized. While she had publicly embraced the role of ambassador with enthusiasm and poise, behind the scenes, the venture's collapse reflected the recurring vulnerability that had long characterized her business undertakings. Andrew, though no longer directly involved, was again tangentially affected. His historical pattern of providing financial stability through bailouts, personal support, and the shared history of Ferguson's spending habits meant that any failure on her part cast a shadow over his financial reputation. Observers noted the familiar pattern. Ferguson's projects were glamorous, high visibility, and designed to impress, yet they often proved unstable and unreliable. Andrew's indirect financial exposure persisted, a reminder that even decades later, the consequences of codependence could ripple outward, impacting his finances and public perception. The Pegasus venture was emblematic of a broader reality in the royal household. Ambition and optimism frequently collided with risk and harsh financial truths. Ferguson's determination to reinvent herself and assert relevance repeatedly drove her toward ventures that promised great reward but carried equal danger. Andrew, inevitably, remained a peripheral figure caught in the wake of these bold experiments, demonstrating how his personal fortune had become entangled with her enduring pursuit of visibility, success, and redemption. Ultimately, the collapse of Pegasus reinforced a pattern that had defined decades of fiscal turbulence. Even extraordinary charm, public favor, or ambitious ideas could not shield against the consequences of mismanagement. The allure of high-stakes ventures for Ferguson was as intoxicating as it was perilous, while for Andrew, it was a reminder that proximity to risk, even indirectly, could carry very real financial consequences. In this intertwining of ambition, glamour, and instability, the royal narrative once again highlighted the fragile intersection of status, visibility, and the enduring cost of financial exposure. Ferguson's glittering comeback through Pegasus crumbled, dragging Andrew deeper into another costly royal fiasco. But can Andrew ever escape the shadow of Ferguson's choices? Or is he bound forever by them? And as the world watches, will their story end in recovery or royal ruin? Let's uncover the details. Reinvention and risk. By the years 2023 to 2025, Sarah Ferguson found herself at a crossroads of personal and financial challenges. Health concerns added a new layer of urgency to an already complicated life, while financial pressures continued to mount. At the same time, Prince Andrew was facing his own difficulties: reduced allowances, mounting public scrutiny, and the quiet erosion of the royal safety net that had long cushioned both of their lifestyles. For Ferguson, this period demanded reinvention, a careful recalibration of image, influence, and opportunity. Determined to remain visible and relevant in an ever-changing world, Ferguson turned to modern platforms that could amplify her voice and rebuild her brand. Social media became a powerful tool in her arsenal, allowing her to speak directly to the public, showcase wellness advocacy, and frame herself as a figure of resilience rather than scandal. She explored a variety of potential projects, with one particularly high-profile endeavor generating widespread attention: a proposed tell-all memoir, The Duchess Tells All. Reportedly commanding a £5 million advance, the book was more than a publication. It was a calculated attempt to convert decades of personal experiences, missteps, and public fascination into tangible capital. The strategy was clear: transform personal history into influence and regain a foothold in a world that had long moved past her. Yet for Andrew, Ferguson's reinvention was far from a private matter. Every new venture, every attempt at relevance, every headline that featured Ferguson inevitably reflected back on him. The entanglement of their finances and public images meant that Andrew remained indirectly exposed. Whether it was the loss of Royal Lodge, the reduction in allowances, or the intense scrutiny of press and public opinion, the fallout highlighted a stark truth: even royalty, insulated by title and privilege, is not immune to the consequences of high-profile financial mismanagement. Andrew's personal fortune and reputation had, over decades, become intertwined with Ferguson's ambitions, miscalculations, and this intertwining of fortunes and public perception offers a sobering lesson. It illustrates how proximity to high-risk ventures and visible personal missteps can have lasting effects, even on individuals who are seemingly protected by status and wealth. The saga of Andrew and Ferguson is not just a story of one woman's attempts to reinvent herself. It is a cautionary tale of fiscal exposure, the perils of codependence, and the limits of social and financial safety nets. Royal titles and public esteem may endure, but financial reality is indiscriminate, often striking where one least expects it. Ultimately, Andrew's ongoing crisis was shaped not simply by his own misfortune, but by decades spent navigating the consequences of Ferguson's high-risk choices. Each venture, each headline, each scandal layered additional strain on his finances and reputation, creating a narrative that continues to captivate observers worldwide. From the glittering heights of pageantry to the stark realities of financial vulnerability, the story underscores a timeless truth. Privilege may provide opportunity, but it does not guarantee immunity. Wealth, status, and visibility offer no shield against the cascading effects of risky decisions and relentless public scrutiny. In this story of intertwined lives, scandal, and resilience, Andrew's financial struggles serve as a vivid reminder that the cost of proximity to risk, whether personal, public, or financial, is a burden that no title can completely absolve. And for Ferguson, the pursuit of relevance, reinvention, and redemption remains both a lifeline and a gamble, with consequences that continue to ripple far beyond her own story, forever linking her fate with that of the man she once called her husband. So, what do you think about Andrew's financial crisis? Can he bounce back, or is bankruptcy inevitable? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.